going on, everybody? This is Shay coming back at you with another episode of the Emmaus proposition. Man, I am super excited. Glad y'all listening. I got a lot to say, so hopefully we can continue this on for a while, man. We can get some more people joining on the conversation. But today's episode, I want to talk to y'all about love. What is love? And anybody out there that just got that Hathaway song stuck in your head, from 1993, y'all know it because all y'all love Night at the Roxbury, you know what I'm talking about? So, what is love? What is love? Baby, don't hurt me. No, I'm not going to go in there. But I found myself asking myself that question today, man. Like, what is love? I actually did my word of encouragement for today. That's what I did it on. I did it on this idea of love. And I kind of talked about God in a little bit through that. And we're gonna explore some of that in this episode today. But if y'all hadn't checked me out over on YouTube, man, y'all please check me out over on YouTube. Listen to those words of encouragement. And for those of y'all who are listening on YouTube but don't know, I'm also on Spotify on a podcast over there. It's on Anchor too. I'm trying to get it up on, you should be able to check it out through Apple and through Google as well. So man, y'all go spread the word and we'll keep this thing rolling. But love, right? I think we have a lot of different ideas about what we feel like love is. So we come into this world, we feel this familial feelings for like our parents and our siblings. Hope, sometimes your siblings. But I don't think we ever really get love defined for us when we're kids. We're just kind of expected to walk into it like our folks and our family tells us they love us. We say it back, but we don't really. I don't know if we always associate it well, right? And then we start getting older. We get into our teenage years. And that love becomes that LUV love. Y'all know what I'm talking about. That little puppy dog love. That's that love that New Edition was talking about when they told you to cool it now, or cool it down, or whatever they said. Cool it now? Cool it now? Yeah, cool it now. When they was talking about it, that was like a puppy love kind of thing where you just got this infatuation with another person. And we throw this term out. We say, like, I love you too, I love you more. No, you hang up first. No, you hang up first. We got all that, right? But still, I don't think we clearly define what we mean by love. And so then we grow up and we go through the whole boyfriend-girlfriend phase, and then we go into our marriage years. And then by this time, there's this expectation that we know what love is. And I think that puts us into a trap, man, if I'm being quite honest. Because what we start to find is like we have all these weird definitions of love, and in the English language, it's only love, right? There's only one word for love. I was looking at it earlier, where love in like ancient Greek, they had like 6 different words for love. They had familial love. I think it was like storage or something like that. They had philia, or where we get the word Philadelphia. So that was that brotherly love, right? We had eros, or they had eros, which was like a romantic love. They had self-love. They had like just hospitality kind of love. And then there was agape. There was this agape love that transcended all these other kinds of love. But we're not from the ancient Greek. We don't do that. We have this kind of love that's just kind of, we use the same word for our love of bacon and our spouse. Like we don't have any kind of separate word for those. And so we get confused. I do a lot of couples counseling, or I'll do couples retreats or singles retreats. And I try to explain love is more than just an emotion. Because people, like, especially in counseling, like they'll come up and they'll say stuff like, I love you, but I'm not in love with you. And they'll use that as a justification of breaking their covenant with another person. And I have to explain to them, like, yo, like, love is more than just a feeling. Love is more than just chemical reactions going on throughout your body, and you react to them in particular ways. Like I try to help them understand like what love is. Like love is more about, it's about commitment. It's about being able to rely on another human being, being able to commit to them. It has all these other aspects to it, more than just a feeling, an emotion, an emotional thing that's more to do with your hormones, which can go like up and down. And so love, like what is, like I continue to ask this question, what is love then? I'm gonna get to that, what I think love is, because I think it has more to do with the character of God than it does with our definitions of it. But first, man, like, tell y'all some stuff about stuff that I love. I love hip hop. I really do. Like it is, there's something to it, to where like if I hear like a turntable, if I hear somebody just drop like just some rhymes that has like complexity and honesty to it, there's just something about the form of hip hop that I just really gravitate toward. One of the songs that I like most is this song by Mos Def, right? And he put out this album called Black on Both Sides. And on that album, there was a song called Love. It was called Love. And I want to play it for y'all, but I haven't quite figured out this YouTube thing where I can take music and put it into video and upload it without them getting all upset with me. Maybe some of y'all watched that last episode. I got like a copyright thing that they said I wasn't supposed to do. So for y'all that are out there that know how to put music into a YouTube video, please help your brother out, because I love music, so I'm gonna bring it up. I'm gonna bring it up a lot, and I want to be able to let y'all listen to the things that I'm talking about. Anyway, Mos Def has this song called Love, and he's talking about his love of hip hop and how it started off as a manifestation of his love that he received from his parents, that he was then able to transfer onto his love of music. And so since I can't play it for y'all, I'm going to say some of the lyrics, right? He starts off with this. It's actually from Rakim. So Rakim was a 80s, 90s rapper that he was just a lyricist, man. Like he was a poet that, and just used the medium of hip hop to express his message, right? But this is like a hip hop staple. This verse right here, he says, I start to think and then I sink into the paper. Like I was ink when I'm writing, I'm trapped in between the lines. I escape when I finish the rhyme. I start to think and then I sink into the paper. Like I was ink when I'm writing, I'm trapped in between the lines. I escape when I finish. So that's Mos Def. He's starting off with this. He's taking this old of medium that he loves, and he's putting it right into his song, right? So already it's starting off. If you're an old hip hop head, you're like, oh, that's Rakim. Like you're getting into it, right? And matter of fact, there is some Psalms that talk about how I forget which Psalm it was. I'm trying to recall it to memory. It talks about how my tongue is like the pen of a ready scribe. Man, there's some familiarity there, right? So anyway, Mos Def, he brings us with some Rakim, and then he starts into his verse. He says, my pop said he was in love when he made me. Thought about it for a second, wasn't hard to see. I can hear he was sincere, wasn't game or promotion. The entire affair was probably charged with emotion. With love caught your heart, I guess you got to pursue. 12-11-7-3, my life is testament. Praise the beneficent element, that breath, devoid in the love that make love manifest. I spent my early years in Roosevelt projects. It was a bright valley with some dark prospects. In 83, Vinny C was the host with the most. I listened to the rap attack and held the radio close. This is far before the days of high glamour and prose. And yo, power from the streetlight made the place dark. I know if you understand what I'm talking about. It was love for the thing that made me want to stay out. It was love for the thing that made me stay in the house. Spending time writing rhymes, trying to find words to describe the vibe that's inside the space. When you close your eyes and you screw your face. Is this the pain of too much tenderness to make me nod my head in reverence? Should I visit this place in remembrance or build landmarks here as evidence? Nighttime spirit shook my temperament to write rhymes that portray this sentiment. We live the now for the promise of the infinite. We live in now for the promise of the infinite. And we believe in the promise, love. Right? So Mos Def is like, he's describing this love. It's like an ode to hip hop that he's coming in. And me, man, coming along to it. It's not like I grew up in Brooklyn or anything like that. I spent my early years in the red clay of South Carolina. You know what I'm saying? I spent my summertime in the hills of Columbus, Ohio. And so running the streets, I do know what that's like. Like when them street lights come on. Matter of fact, if you ain't in the yard when the street lights come on, there's beef. Like you and your mom just got beef. And my mom will probably still know what I'm talking about on that one. But when those street lights come on, it wasn't, so he's describing the street lights coming on, and there was stuff that started to happen at night. So when the street lights come on, the place starts turning dark spiritually. My pop said I'm gonna just go through it. My pop said he was in love when he made me. Man, I think about that. So when I first heard this album, I can remember back to when just kind of processing. I never got a chance to even ask my dad that question. I guarantee he was. So me and my mom and my dad, they were super young when they had me, and so I don't know if they had that like LUV love that we was talking about earlier, but they definitely had this love between them, between our families, and to see that love become manifest in a human being, I bet you was exciting. Like I know it from my daughter. Me and my wife, we went through a tough time when we were first married, but then like once we got our act together, and God put us in a place that we could have our daughter, to watch the love that God built between us become manifest. Oh man, like I know what he's talking about. I know the love that he's describing that wells up inside you. He said, I know it wasn't a game or promotion. The entire affair was probably charged with emotion. Like I get that. I totally understand where he's coming from there. He says, when love call your heart, I guess you gotta pursue. There's certain things in life, right, where they call it some. So this is where I say, like, we don't have different words for love. I think more of what he's talking about here is passion. So when passion call your heart, I guess you got to pursue. So when you're passionate about something in life, you got to go for it. That's kind of how it was when I first became a pastor, right? Like I didn't know. Man, if y'all had known me before I became a pastor, and some of y'all did know me before I became a pastor, I didn't like to talk. Even this right here, like this relationship I'm developing with y'all, this would have been weird for me. It's still kind of weird for me. Like I would much rather watch and listen than to express what's going on inside. And so, but when passion calls you, when passion just kind of sets its sights on you, you got to pursue it. And so my passion is to tell people about Christ, man. My passion is to walk through life and see stuff that's going on in the world, stuff that's going on in media, taking people that are in like weird spaces. So like gamers and sci-fi nerds and jocks and all these places where Christ doesn't normally reside. Because I have my foot in all those worlds, my passion is to go to those worlds and talk to them about Christ in their language. I think that's what Paul did, right? Paul was a dude that he was so knowledgeable in things that were going on in culture. He was able to take that knowledge of culture and talk to it about God. So the most famous time that he did that, he went to this place and it was filled with people there that the reason they went there was to hear new ideas about philosophy and life. Like it was their whole reason of going. And so Paul rose up. He's looking at the city. He's looking at all the statues. He's peeking around the city, looking at different poets and listening to all the people engage and how they're engaging. And he rose up on the scene. And he's like, yo, I got a new teaching for y'all. God is... So the people had this statue. And so they had like this pantheon of statues to all these different gods. And they even had a statue to the unknown God. Like they were just trying to cover all bases. Like they were trying to... I think they were a lot like our culture, right? They lived in a pluralistic culture just like we do, where you have like all these different ideas and gods and worldviews and everything else. And Paul was like, I don't care that y'all have different worldviews. I want to come tell you the truth. That God that y'all say is unknowable, he's the God of the universe that created everything. And all these other gods couldn't even hold a candlestick to the true and living God. That's what I want to do. That's what I'm passionate about. I'm passionate about going into the gamers and talking about gaming. I'm talking about like Assassin's Creed and when Batman was coming out. Like I just talking about like the different like savior story arcs throughout all those video games. Final Fantasy is another big one that has a big savior story arc and pointing people to the true living God. And so when you got a passion for that kind of stuff, you got to pursue it. And that's what this is. That's what the Emmaus proposition is all about. It's about pursuing all those lines of life, of culture, and then seeing how God is the ultimate truth of them. Anyway, he said, I listened to the Rap Attack and held the radio close. That was back in the day, man, when we didn't have like CDs or MP3s or iTunes or none of that stuff, man. We had the radio. And then if you had a radio, you pop in a tape and you record your favorite joints that was coming on the radio. I remember my cousins, it was either Mike or Mark, I forget who it was, but they made me a tape of Slick Rick, right? So it was Lottie Dottie on one side and the show on the other side. And man, when I tell y'all I ran that tape, I think Biggie said, I let the tape rock till my tape popped. That was me, man. That Slick Rick, the show, and Lottie Dottie, I had them joints like memorized. And which, as a young dude trying to take out the curse words from mom because I wanted to perform for her, but the songs are kind of cussing up a storm, and so I'm trying to figure that out, and she's shocked about all the stuff I'm rapping about. But that's what this is talking about. Like I listened to the Rap Attack and held the radio close. The radio was all we had, whatever came on the radio. Unless you lived in a place like New York where they was always putting out something on the streets or something like that. But like I said, I spent my super early years in Columbus, spent the rest of my growing up years in South Carolina, did some summers in Columbus. And so we had the radio. That was all we had. I know a few understand what I'm talking about. So it was love for the thing that made me want to stay out. It was love for the thing that made me stay in the house. Yo, y'all ever felt that kind of tension before where you're like, man, I got this love, I got this passion for this thing, and I want to go do it. But there's all these emotions where you're like, do I go out and perform, or do I stay home and write? Or do I go out and be out with my friends as we're trying to develop this love together, or are they going to be in trouble and I need to stay in? Like there's all these kind of mixed emotions, and that's what love will do. I think it was Al Green, Love and Happiness. He says something to make you do wrong, but make you do right. What is that? What is that about when we have love? Like we have all these different emotions where it'll keep you from doing the wrong thing if you're in that mindset, right? But man, it'll pull you away and get you to do the wrong thing at the same time. So I think that's what Mos is kind of describing there. trying to find words to describe the vibe that's inside the space. When you close your eyes and you screw your face, they're like, yo, if you ever watch somebody that's really into a song they like and they make that like that's funky right there, right? I got that with so many songs, man. And it's funny talking to other people who are in love with music. They kind of have some of that too, where they just fall along. They fall in love with what they're hearing lyrically. And then as you start picking it apart, I remember I took a music appreciation course, and I went through and I listened to, it was like some super early classical music, like Bach, and man, I'm blanking on some of the other cats' names, but man, it was one of the best courses I took because I started to hear the breakdown in music. So it became more than 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of thing. It became like the introduction of particular sounds that give a song depth. And then within the prose of hip hop, right? The music actually begins to tell a story. It's a lot like classical music in that kind of way. So you had the early DJs that would take an old song, like Mos on one of his other songs on this album. He took an old song from Aretha Franklin and just put that in the melody of the song, but that became the undertone of the song. So everything he's talking about, though he might be talking about something over here, the music is kind of revealing the undercurrent of his feelings about what he's saying over here. So it adds complexity and different notes to the music. And when you start to hear those things, and they start to connect with you on an emotional level, there's some songs, man, like sometimes when I listen to this song and that part where it says, my pop said he was in love when he made me, there's sometimes, man, I gotta pause and just think about how, like I think I said earlier, like I've never had that conversation with my pops. And so wondering what love was actually there when my pops made me. And then taking that and applying it to my own kids, like wanting to make sure they know, like, man, I love your mom, I love you, I love our life, I love that you're in my life, like kind of just propping those things up, because I never want my kids to have that kind of wondering. Like I always want them to know. And he says, is this the pain of too much tenderness to make me nod my head in reverence? Should I visit this place in remembrance or build landmarks here as evidence? Man, this song is so good, man. Talking about love, talking about all these things. And it continually, like almost everything in my life, man, it continually points me back to Christ. I had this conversation with somebody earlier today. We were talking about love, actually. Because I was saying it was weird that culturally, people wear these bumper stickers on the back of their cars like love is love, and they feel like they have a definition of what love is, and if you disagree with that definition of what love is, then you're in the wrong because you can't tell me who to love, and you can't define love for me. There is no definition of love. Love is relative. Each person gets to define what they mean by love. And man, the big problem with that is that we are not the creators or the perpetrators of what love is. Like we get a chance to experience it, but we didn't create love. We're not the ones who pushed it out into the universe. We're just the people that kind of ride the wave. That would be like a surfer saying that they created the wave. Like they get it. They are what the definition of a wave is. Nah, big. Like you ride the wave. You don't create the wave. You ride the wave. Like you experience it. This is something that's out there that wasn't put forth by us. It was put forth by God Almighty. God is the one who created love. God is the one who, after he in the very beginning, after he created everything. So he spent the first 5 days creating the earth and the water and the land and the mountains and the seas and the stars and the planets and all that stuff. Like he took his time creating the animals and the birds and the fish and all that stuff, right? Took the first 5 days to create that. Evening and morning, day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, he comes up and he creates people. And all this time, God had been saying, man, this is good. This is good stuff right here. Like he's mixing up the Mediterranean Sea. He's like, man, this is good right here. He's mixing up the Himalayan mountains. He's like, man, yeah, man, this is good right here. He's creating stars and quasars, and he's creating black holes and dark matter out in space. And he's like, yo, this is good. Yo, watch this, y'all. This is good. He creates the duck-billed platypus. And for some reason, he says, this is good. And so there we are. The end of day 5, he starts into day 6, and he creates man. And not only does God say, this is good, man, he said, this is very good. And then he says, man, but it's not good to have my boy Adam alone. I need to make him a helper that's fit for him. And so he fashions Eve. And I don't know if that's what he did, but y'all, for those of y'all listening, I did my hands in like a little curvy shape. I don't know if that's what he did. I don't know what Eve looked like. But she was a brick house enough for Adam to go, oh my goodness, at last. I'm sick of looking at that sheep over there. This is what I'm looking for right here. And so God looks at everything he made. He's like, man, this is very good. That very good is almost the first pronouncement of love that God makes. Looking at human beings in a natural environment, ruling over the creation that God made. He says, man, this is very good. This is what I intended. God continues to express that agape, that unconditional love throughout his creation, right? Even when people rebel against him. Adam and Eve rebel against God. He could have smoked them right on the spot, right? He could have just murked them right out. Instead, he actually kills one of the animals in order to cover them. Adam and Eve have boys, Cain and Abel. Cain kills his brother Abel. Instead of God just like taking him out right on the spot, he gives him an entire nation that he lets him go and live out his life. At Abraham, God calls Abraham out of paganism in the middle of Iraq. just a random, probably nomadic tribesman that's out in the middle of Iraq. He calls him and says, dude, you gonna roll with me now. And even though God spoke to Abraham directly, Abraham still goes and tries to pimp out his wife to the king of Egypt because for some reason, like, Sarah was too fine, and he thought, like, yo, if they find out that I'm her husband, they're going to kill me to get you, so let's just tell them you're my sister. And, like, lets her go off with the dude. And God still continues to express his love toward Abraham. His whole life. Continuing promises to him. Giving him promises of, man, I know you don't have kids now, but you're going to have so many kids one day. You're not going to be, it's going to be more than the stars in the sky. Love, then, at that point, love is not an overly emotional feeling. Love is now more than that. People like to say, people's favorite Bible verse is John 3:16, right? For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. And they take that, and they'll take a verse like 1 John where it says God is love. And they'll say stuff like, how could a loving God allow bad things to happen to good people? But what I think people do, they have a fundamental misinterpretation of what love is. Because they're putting their own standard of love onto God, as if they are the definers of love and God is supposed to ride the wave. You see how that's backwards? People who say that to God, like how could God, the supposed loving God, allow bad things to happen to good people, to children, to innocents? Like how could God do this stuff, right? The love of God is not the only thing about God. God is holy. God is set apart. God is not like us where we can, where everything's relative. So when we look at the culture we live in now, like morality is relative, art is relative, love is relative. Everything's relative. Like however you feel about that thing is the truth of what it is. And everybody's truth. What's true for you is not true for me. So they'll say stuff like, well, that's your truth. Or here's my interpretation of that. It's crazy. It's crazy talk. Because we can only ride the wave of the things that God has created. And as it is with love. And so when it says, John 3:16 says, God so loved the world that he gave his only son. He didn't have this love that he was going to ignore all the bad crap that they did. People do bad stuff. There are Pol Pots and Hitlers and Stalins. The history is filled with them. God, the Bible talks about one of them. Actually, he talks about a couple of them, like Pharaoh and Nebuchadnezzar. Did God love Pharaoh? Pharaoh, who Romans says God intentionally built up so that he could destroy him. Did he love, in our definition, did he love Nebuchadnezzar, who he drove absolutely insane and made him wander out in the field as if he was a beast? We got to be careful when we try to put our own definitions onto what God has already created. God loved them. I can say God loved them, but God loved them because God is holy. And the reason why he created them was so that he could destroy them to be an example of God's power for his people. God loves us, but he loves his holiness more. My kids, right? I tell my kids I love them every night. And so my son, he will, when he gets in trouble, one of his main goes-to is, well, you don't love me. Or if I spend more time with my wife than I spend with him, he'll be like, well, you don't love me more than you love mommy. And my response to him is, son, I love you. I love you with everything I have. I will love you until until my consciousness runs out. I will love you. Take that how you want. I'm not trying to make a theological statement when I say that. I will love you. I love you forever, man. Like as long as I can understand who you are and what our relationship is, man, it's always going to be love. But I love your mother more. And that's how God is with his holiness. I love the world. This is God. I love the world, but I love my holiness more. And that's why if you read the rest of that verse, John 3:16, that's why I said the whole verse, right? For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, right? He gave his son to the world, that whosoever believes shall not perish, but have eternal life. Whosoever believes. The love of God is not spread out to absolutely everyone. If you read Ephesians, it talks about how God pre-loved his people from the foundations of the earth. It says he foreknew his people, like he pre-loved them since the foundation of the world. Christ, when he was on the cross, had those in mind as he was dying on the cross. He didn't have Pontius Pilate in mind. He didn't have those people, those Pharisaical, those Pharisees that that rejected him. He didn't have them in mind as he's dying on the cross. Probably some of them, but not all of them, right? He had his people in mind. He had those who believe in mind. And that faith, even that faith doesn't come from us. It comes from the fact that God loved us before we were ever created. It's God's sovereignty. It's God being in control. It's God defining what love is. That's love. That's agape love. That is love that it's not dependent upon what we do. It's not dependent upon our performance or anything like that. God loved us before he created anything. Sent his son to die for those who he loved, and gave his spirit to those who Christ died to renew. That's the love of God. And so when you come across a bumper sticker like love is love, or I'm going to apply love in this weird way, even though I know God would disagree with my lifestyle, it's still love. Hopefully y'all know what I'm talking about when I say that. It's not love. That's some kind of weird infatuation thing. That's some kind of thing that you're trying to create your own definition of love, essentially saying, God, I know what love is better than you do. Imagine that. Imagine a surfer saying, I'm going to create my own wave better than the waves I can find in Australia. It doesn't make sense. We can't do that. It's ultimate failure. And it becomes super confusing when we see that stuff out in culture. It's the opportunity for us to say, man, what does love look like? And the Bible would make the case that love actually looks like the cross. It was at the cross where Jesus was. We just celebrated Easter, right? It was at the cross where love was put on full display. What does it look like for God to love people who don't love him back? It looks like the cross. It looks like Jesus being punched in the face, spit on, beard pulled out, crown of thorns stuffed into his head, flesh ripped off of his body. And he doesn't cry out. Bleeding from every orifice, praying so hard for his people that the sweat is turning into blood. And as he's up there, and people are jeering at him, they're like, if you talk about saving your people, why don't you even save yourself? He says, God, please forgive them. They don't understand. They don't understand that I actually love them. I am going through this for their benefit. Yo, that's love. Love is not leaving your people. Love is not like instant gratification. So could God solve all of the world's problems in a heartbeat? God could think it and it'd be done. But God also knows that ultimately that's not going to drive us to love him. It's not going to drive us to love him more. If we solved all of the world's problems tomorrow, world hunger was gone. We found a way scientifically to undo natural disasters. That wouldn't make us love God more. That would actually make us love ourselves more, because we'd be like, look what we can do. We can overcome. We can do what God can't. We would try to give the glory to ourselves. So God is like, no, I'm not going to solve these problems, because ultimately I want them to see my love looks like me sacrificing my only son on their behalf. My love looks like not letting my son stay dead, but making a promise to have him raise up 3 days later and actually accomplishing it. My love looks like bringing my son back into the throne room, letting him sit at my right hand, and letting him rule over everything. My love looks like my son being an advocate for everyone who says they don't love me. Or if they say they love me, they only love me sometimes. And I'm including myself in that one. Love looks like giving them an advocate so they don't suffer eternal punishment. Yo, that's what love looks like. Love is not a love is love bumper sticker. Love is not campaigning for these sexual preferences so that people could just have sex with whoever they want to. That's not love. Love is not love is not chaining yourself to a tree to try to protect the tree. Love is not chaining yourself to a basketball rim because you're upset about chickens. This stuff is happening in our culture because people are trying to define love for themselves. And I get it. We got different things that we love. But ultimately what we got to do, man, we got to ask ourselves these questions like, what does God mean by these things? And God says, my love, the love I have for you, the love my son has for you, the love the Spirit has for you, looks exactly like the cross. It looks like the life, death, and resurrection of Christ. That's what love looks like. And so all of life, once again, this is the Emmaus proposition, that all of life ultimately leads us back to Christ. Man, I hope y'all enjoyed the episode. I'm gonna keep doing this, man. I hope y'all keep tuning in. If you got some pushback, yo, let's talk about it. Hit me up with some questions. We can drop some back and forth. I'd love to. Some of y'all got my email address. Actually, I think my email address, you can get to it through the page. If you're on YouTube, hit me up in the comment section. Love to talk to you about it. But man, God is love. But the love of God looks like the cross. Hope y'all enjoyed the episode, man. I love y'all. I agape y'all. Until next time, grace and peace.